Pre-video disclaimer, DZO Film did send out these lenses to me for free. I like to think that this wouldn't affect my opinion, and if they're bad, I will say they're bad, but I would feel awful if I didn't disclose this information. So here we are. Over the past 3 months, I've been using this new set of DZO Film Vespid Primes on a number of different shoots in a number of different situations. My set ranges from the 25mm through to the 35mm, 50mm, 75mm, I've got a 90mm macro, and then I've got a 125mm lens, and long story short, I really like them. You know, I've used them in a number of different lighting setups with a number of different rigs, sometimes being fully rigged up, sometimes being run and gun, and in every situation, I've been really quite impressed. So first off, let's take a look at some of the characteristics that we look out for in a successful cinema lens. Now the first thing is consistency, both in build and also in character. Now when it comes to build, I've got a little chart on the screen that shows all of the lenses are pretty consistent, apart from the 90mm macro, which stands out in a few examples, but they all have the same maximum aperture of t2.1, they all have the same focus throw of 270 degrees, they all weigh within around about 200 grams of one another, they have the same front diameter, same front filter size, the iris rings and the focus rings all line up. And this is all good stuff because consistent lenses means that when you perform a lens swap, you don't have to completely re-rig your camera to make up for the differences in the lenses. Now consistency in character is hugely important because say you go from a 25mm to a 75mm, you don't want to see any huge shifts in color or contrast or the way that the lens renders the image. And I would say from my tests, these perform really well. To my uncalibrated eyeballs, this looks pretty good. Next up, we have focus breathing. A cinema lens shouldn't draw attention to a focus pull and it shouldn't reframe the shot in any way. And I would say, especially given the price point, focus breathing here is very well controlled. You know, I've compared it to the absolute Darth Vader of lenses. This thing breathes all over the place, so it's a bit of an unfair comparison, but you can see the difference that no focus breathing makes to a shot. It just looks much higher quality. Cinema lenses have to be built to last. They have to be rugged because they're going to be chucked around on sets their entire lives, and you have to be able to count on them when it matters most. Now, I guess only time will tell on this one, but first impressions are, despite the fact they're quite light cinema lenses, they feel solid, they feel well engineered. The only issue that I had is the focus throw was a little bit sticky on some of the lenses when I first got them out of the box, but after using them for 2 or 3 weeks and I guess wearing them in, that went away, so now I'm happy. I guess I'll revisit this question in 2 or 3 years' time when they've been beaten up a little bit. So that's all the technical information out of the way. Now it's time to move on to arguably the most important point, but also the most challenging to define. You know, it's the most subjective, it's the way they look, it's their character. And a lot of reviews online say that they sit somewhere between modern lenses and vintage lenses, and I would wholeheartedly agree. You know, they aren't too harsh, they have good color separation. At T2, they have a wonderful softness that just looks really natural and organic. You're not seeing details that you can't see with the naked eye. And I love the way they flare. They have this beautiful bloom that kind of veils across the image. Occasionally you'll get this nasty green blob that if it hits someone's face, it doesn't look great. But if you avoid that, they're fantastic. My many vintage lenses can be a huge pain to use for a number of different reasons. And occasionally the look is just way too intense. But then my modern stills lenses need about a half pro mist to look even remotely neutral. These are a really happy medium, and I've actually approached a handful of shoots recently with only an 1/8 pro mist or even no pro mist whatsoever, which is pretty unheard of for me. So these definitely fit my style of shooting. I'm going to be taking them on a big commercial that I have coming up, and I'm using them for all of my current filming projects because, as I say, they're that happy medium. They render things organically and naturally, and that is the look that I want for my films. And that's just in Super 35. These lenses do cover full frame and large format sensors, so that'll be a very interesting avenue to investigate when I eventually get my hands on a full frame or large format cinema camera. So other than the very small little gripes that I mentioned throughout the video, I'm very impressed. You will be seeing me shooting plenty more projects with these lenses. Anyway, I hope you found this informative. I hope you found it interesting. It's been pretty nerdy today, and I love it. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.